What did you have for breakfast today? Bread, cheese, milk, maybe cereal. Sounds pretty ordinary, doesn't it? What if those foods suddenly disappeared? No grocery stores, no farms, no agriculture. Imagine no home, no kitchen, no food, just you and the wilderness, because once upon a time, this was how humanity lived. This video is not just a history lesson, it is the unwritten story of humanity. I will tell you how a seed started a civilization. If you are ready, we are getting in the time machine. The world was different 12,000 years ago. People were part of nature, not the rulers. They migrated in small groups, followed animals, lived with the seasons. What they called technology was just a few rocks, some wood, and a lot of experience. Finding food was a daily battle. But there was another side to that life. They were the first people to look up at the night sky and ask, why are we here? And one day, that simple life began to change with a little something growing in the soil, a seed. The Fertile Crescent, a region stretching from today's Iraq to Turkey, a place that has been the scene of miracles throughout history. The first agriculture began here. Wheat, barley, and lentils were domesticated here. The seed was planted and people began to understand nature. They no longer relied on nature's whims, but on their own intelligence. When agriculture began, everything changed. They didn't have to migrate anymore. They built houses, they stayed connected to the land, and they learned to live together. Katal Hiyuk, a huge settlement where 10,000 people live. The houses are wall to wall. There are no streets, but there are murals inside. The first art, the first gods, the first rituals. Not only plants, animals also changed. People first domesticated sheep, then goats, then cows. Milk, meat, wool, fertilizer. Animals were no longer just prey, they were partners. This took agriculture one step further. They plowed the field with oxen, increasing the carrying power. Nature was no longer just a test, it was a partnership. Agriculture brought surplus. Surplus is specialization. Some worked in the fields, some stole pots and pans, some said they talked to the gods. But it also started inequality. Some kept the surplus, some worked all the time. Classes formed, the balance of power shifted, and for the first time history began to be written. The reason for the emergence of writing was very simple. Who bought how much wheat? Who paid how much tax? In other words, writing was not a pen, it was a calculation at first. Most of the people who started the agricultural revolution were women. It's surprising but true, because they were the ones who knew plants best, who spent the most time with nature. The first to notice what was edible, what was poisonous, and how each seed sprouted were probably mothers. Women observed nature, collected information, and passed it on. This is how the belief in Mother Earth emerged in many early societies. The earth was fertile, so was woman. Humanity's first religious images were often female figures. With agriculture, people needed to measure time, when to plant seeds, when to harvest, when does the weather get cold, when does it get warm. And so the first calendars were born. Months and seasons were determined by observing celestial bodies. Time was now conscious. People began to move according to the rhythm of nature. That's why most of the old structures were aligned to the sun or the moon, because time was as vital as the product. Agriculture meant surplus. Surplus meant trust. Trust meant permanence. Small villages turned into large towns, then giant city-states. Humanity began to become permanent thanks to the bond it established with the land. The first markets were established. Trade began, ideas, goods, people began to move. And most of the cities were built on the waterfront because agriculture was friendly with water. The Nile, the Tigris-Euphrates, the Indus, the Yellow River. These were not just rivers, they were the veins of civilization. But there was a limit to every excess. Drought, infestation, flood, farming was not always safe. If there was plenty one year, there could be famine the next. That's why the first wars also started because of agriculture. For land, for water, for granaries. With agriculture, for the first time, the concept of defending one's land emerged. And throughout history, the bloodiest wars were fought for land. Agriculture was not just a physical revolution, it was a cultural revolution. Beliefs changed, art changed, music changed. People began to imitate nature, because nature was no longer something to be feared, but something to be observed. Artists painted the land, the harvest, the animals, and for the first time, people began to set rules not only for nature, but also for each other. Laws were written, rights and duties were defined, and thus civilization was born. Today, agriculture is changing again. Artificial intelligence, sensors, robot tractors. Agriculture is being reborn in the heart of technology. Farming without soil, plants growing without seeing the sun. These are the farms of the future. But perhaps, no matter how far we advance, man's bond with the soil will always remain the same. Because agriculture is not just production, it was man's understanding of himself. A seed is not only planted in the soil, but also in time. 12,000 years ago someone planted it. Today you are watching. Now it's your turn. What will you plant? Don't forget to like the video and subscribe.